Oh no! Mom fell down the stairs at home and got hurt.
The moment he hit the call button, my husband, Henry, spoke in a panicked voice. What?
I said, Mom got hurt. I'll be staying at her place for a while to take care of her. I'll be away from home.
His mom? If he's talking about Nora, she's sitting right in front of me. At this very moment, I was having a pleasant tea break with my mother-in-law, Nora, at her house. What in the world was Henry talking about? Seeing my confusion, Nora gave me a quick glance and pressed her finger to her lips, whispering, "Shh." I nodded, set my phone to speaker mode, and placed it between Nora and me. Really? Nora got hurt. Then I'll head over to her place right away. I confirmed loudly, making sure Nora could hear every word.
No. You and Mom don't get along well, remember? Let me handle this. Bye.
Clearly unwilling to continue the conversation, Henry abruptly hung up the call. As I sat there stunned, trying to make sense of what had just happened, Nora, who had been holding back laughter, burst out as soon as the call ended.
Well, let's wait and see how this plays out for a bit, shall we?
Henry, who had completely lost interest in me, was still unaware of the secret bond Nora and I shared. Imagining how Henry might pale when he finally realized, I couldn't help but suppress a grin. My name is Megan. Since graduating from high school, I've been working as a caregiver and am now in my 50s. My husband, Henry, was my high school classmate, and we got married in our late 20s. In the early days of our marriage, I had a big concern. It was Nora, my mother-in-law. Since Henry's parents lived nearby, I frequently saw Nora during daily routines like grocery shopping or taking out the trash. Of course, I always greeted her with a smile, but Nora always ignored me. Knowing she was highly educated and had once been a globe-trotting career woman, I assumed she disapproved of me, a mere high school graduate, as her son's wife. But as it turns out, I was completely wrong. One day, Nora confronted me about frequently being out late at night. Her probing gaze made it clear she suspected me of infidelity.
You're always out until all hours. It's pitiful for my son.
Nora, that's not true. Actually, I work as a caregiver, and sometimes families call me late at night because an elderly client tends to wander off. That's why I get home so late. When I explained the situation honestly, Nora blushed and sincerely apologized for her misunderstanding.
I'm so sorry for saying such rude things. I just jumped to conclusions about you having an affair.
Watching her sincerely apologize, I realized I had also misjudged Nora. When I shared the story of why I became a caregiver, Nora gave me a warm smile and a kind look. Back in high school, I had once escorted an elderly woman with dementia who was wandering around the neighborhood to the local police station. The caregiver who came to pick her up spoke so gently to her that I was inspired to become someone just like that.
Honestly, I'm proud to have you as my daughter-in-law.
Seeing that Nora didn't judge people based on their education or background, we now spend quality time together, often going out for lunch or enjoying tea like close friends. However, challenges never cease. About 3 years into our marriage, Henry suddenly started treating me coldly. Assuming he was simply tired from work, I tried my best to stay cheerful. Welcome Home, that movie we watched on our first date, is on TV tonight. Want to watch it together? It had become a tradition to watch it with popcorn every time it aired.
I'm tired of it. Sorry, but I've got work to finish.
Without even looking at me, Henry disappeared into his office. Passing by his room after my bath, I heard laughter coming from inside. Lately, Henry's laughter, which I rarely hear anymore. Is it a remote meeting? It sounds awfully cheerful for that. Figuring it was just some casual banter during a meeting, I didn't think much of it and headed to bed alone. But as I continued to ignore those small moments of unease, the distance between us grew into an unbridgeable gap. Henry, who used to remember every anniversary and birthday, now claimed to work late and sometimes came home reeking of alcohol. When I confronted him about the smell despite his late work, he unapologetically said it was an unexpected business dinner, clicking his tongue in irritation. Over time, our intimate moments disappeared, and even when I tried to cuddle in bed, he'd turn away with annoyance.
My job isn't like your caregiving social club. I actually have to use my brain, and it's exhausting.
He said this without even looking at me. A social club? Is that really how he sees my work? I take pride in my job as a caregiver. Helping others is fulfilling, and though I don't do it for the gratitude, hearing a thank you always makes me happy. But the work is challenging, and there are far more tough moments than enjoyable ones. I often come home exhausted and still squeeze in steady sessions to improve my skills between work and household chores. Hearing Henry belittle my work made me both angry and sad. But I bit my lip and held it in, unwilling to stir up conflict and sour the atmosphere at home. Henry must just be tired, and he doesn't really mean it. I kept telling myself that and tried to endure it. However, my patience was in vain as the situation only worsened. Henry started claiming he had overtime or business trips, drastically reducing the number of meals he had at home. On the rare occasions he did eat at home, he seemed distracted, eating mechanically without engaging in conversation. "Hey, how's the seasoning on the chicken? Would you prefer it stronger?" There was no response from Henry, as if he hadn't even heard me. "Hey, I'm asking you."
What?
When I repeated my question about the seasoning, Henry glanced at his phone, which he had placed out of my sight, with an expression that screamed indifference.
Chicken. Oh, whatever. As long as it's edible.
Then suddenly standing up, he mumbled something about a call from work and quickly retreated to his office, leaving his half-eaten meal behind. Henry never came out of his room, and I let out a sigh as I stared at the meal he had left more than half uneaten. I made Henry's favorite dinner to cheer him up after working late and coming home late. If he wasn't going to eat, the least he could have done was let me know. I wrapped the leftovers in plastic wrap and put them in the fridge, deciding to pack them for my lunch the next day. The following night, Henry came home completely drunk at 2 a.m. That was the last straw for me. "Hey, if you're going to be this late, could you at least let me know?" It wasn't an unreasonable request. A single message would have sufficed.
A last-minute job came up. Stop nagging me. I'm exhausted.
Henry snapped, sloppily kicking off his shoes and dramatically covering his ears with his hands. "Nagging? I'm just saying I need to plan meals and my own schedule."
Your schedule, huh? All you do is cook the same boring meals every day. Do you even realize who's paying for this nice house you live in?
Though he was drunk, his dismissive tone and words shocked me into silence. For the record, this house was a gift from Nora, and Henry hadn't paid a single cent for it. As for living expenses, aside from utility bills that were automatically withdrawn, I was covering most of them with my own salary. In the beginning, Henry used to contribute cash, but over time, he started dodging the subject altogether. The words were on the tip of my tongue, but I bit my lip to keep from wounding Henry's pride. Henry seemed to sense what I was about to say, furrowing his brow and glaring at me. As his right arm moved, I instinctively flinched, fearing he might hit me. However, he suddenly let out a laugh, and when I looked up, he was smirking at me mockingly.
Well, not like your broke parents contributed a dime.
The words stung as much as any blow. What did you just say? I could barely speak, enraged at how he insulted the parents who had lovingly raised me. Sure, my family wasn't wealthy, but they had offered to help, only for Henry to decline. I still remember the mixed expressions of gratitude and guilt on their faces.
Just marrying Megan makes me the happiest man alive.
Back then, he'd said those words, wrapping his arm around my shoulder. I had felt proud of my choice to marry him. Now, stunned into silence, I watched as Henry coldly barked, "Beth," before retreating to his room. From that day on, Henry began staying at business hotels at least once a week, despite not being on business trips. And of course, he never bothered to inform me beforehand. He claimed it was due to a busy season at work, but how long could one season last? It had been over 6 months. One morning, as I ate breakfast alone as usual, Henry called.
Hey, I'm at the station. Bring me a change of underwear and a clean shirt.
What? I'm stopping by a client's place before work today. I can't.
Well, then get here in 10 minutes.
Ignoring my schedule completely, Henry hung up abruptly. Was I no longer his wife, but merely his servant? I glanced at the clock. It was already 8 a.m. Leaving my breakfast unfinished, I hurriedly packed the clothes into a paper bag, rushed out the door without makeup, and sprinted to the station. Breathless, disheveled, and gasping for air, I handed Henry the bag. Without a word of thanks, he snatched it from me. "Wait here," he commanded arrogantly, pointing at the ground before heading into the station restroom to change. Checking my phone, I saw it was nearly 8:30. I had promised to be at my client's place by 9. Finally, Henry emerged from the restroom, now freshly dressed. The paper bag Henry handed me was stuffed carelessly with the shirt and underwear he had just been wearing. He clicked his tongue in annoyance as he looked at me and said,
At least put on some makeup.
He sneered at my disheveled appearance and quickly headed toward the ticket gate. "It's your fault I look like this." I wanted to scream that at his retreating back, but I didn't have time to argue. Once again, I rushed off, hair flying, to the client's house. After finishing my work, I opened the bag with Henry's laundry at home. A sweet fragrance wafted out. At first, I thought it might be the scent of hotel soap, but it was too strong for that. It was definitely perfume. When I mentioned this to Henry upon his return, he visibly panicked.
Oh, that. The woman next to me on the crowded train was wearing overpowering perfume. That's all.
His eyes darted nervously as he rambled on, offering explanations I hadn't even asked for, which only deepened my suspicions. The next day, Henry came home unusually early, holding a pink paper bag.
Actually, I've been looking for a perfume that suits you lately. That's probably why my shirt smelled like that.
But it's not my birthday. Why? My confusion outweighed any happiness, and I instinctively furrowed my brows.
What's the big deal? I don't need a special occasion, do I? Geez, you're so ungrateful.
Annoyed by my reaction, Henry tossed his bag onto the couch and sulked. A few days later, while I was having tea with Nora at her house, Henry, who had claimed he had to work on his day off, called me. The moment I answered, he yelled in a frantic voice,
It's terrible. Mom fell down the stairs at home and got hurt.
His dramatic tone was so exaggerated that his voice leaked from the phone speaker. His mom? But Nora's sitting right in front of me. Confused, I glanced at Nora, who gave me a knowing look and pressed her finger to her lips, saying, "Shh." I set my phone to speaker mode and placed it between us. Really? Did Nora get hurt? I asked again, making sure Nora could hear every word.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
All right, I'll head over to her place right now. Hearing that, Henry quickly stammered in a panicked voice.
Wait, you don't get along with Mom, remember? Let me handle this. I'll stay at her place for a while to take care of her.
I'm better suited for caregiving.
I said it's fine. Bye.
Clearly unwilling to continue, Henry abruptly ended the call. Nora, who had been holding back laughter, burst out laughing the moment the call ended.
Let's wait and see how this plays out for a bit.
Since Nora suggested it, I decided to go along with her plan. A week later, Henry came home briefly to pick up some clothes and other belongings. So, how's Nora doing? Pretending to be genuinely concerned, I asked with a supportive tone.
Oh, the surgery went well. She'll be able to leave the hospital soon.
I didn't hesitate to point out the inconsistency in his story. Wait, didn't you say she was recovering at home? Henry's face froze as he hastily began explaining.
Yeah, well, she was rushed to the hospital for an emergency surgery. And while doing rehab, she fell and hurt her foot. Can you believe that?
Wait, an emergency? I thought it was an injury, not an illness. I pressed further, not letting up. Sweat began to bead on Henry's face. Lately, he'd been acting like the king of the house, but now he looked pitiful and desperate. I couldn't help but laugh. Suddenly, the door of the next room opened.
Let's hear more about this story, shall we?
Nora, who had been waiting in the next room, appeared with her arms crossed. Caught off guard by Nora's sudden entrance, Henry opened and closed his mouth like a fish out of water, unable to form words.
You told me you two didn't get along.
Henry still seemed to believe that Nora and I were on bad terms. It wasn't surprising, though. Over the past few years, Henry and I had barely had any meaningful conversations. I had tried to tell him several times that Nora had cleared up her misunderstandings about me, and that we'd developed a close, friendly relationship. But it was Henry who had been avoiding conversations with me. Suddenly, Henry let out a startled "oh," as if he'd thought of something.
You misheard me when I said, Mom. I meant David. My senior coworker David slipped at home, had a bad fall, and got seriously injured.
Henry's desperate excuse was unbecoming of a grown man, and I gave him a cold, piercing look. Then, I casually pulled my phone from my pocket and tapped on the screen.
Leave Mom to me. I'll stay at her place for a while to take care of her. Bye.
I had started recording Henry's call midway through last week. It clearly sounds like you said, Mom. Seeing Henry turn pale as his blatant lie was exposed, Nora and I couldn't hold back our laughter any longer. Then, Nora abruptly stopped laughing, furrowed her brow, and took a deep breath, her expression turning serious.
You, whose mother have you been taking care of?
Nora's sharp rebuke startled Henry so much that he almost collapsed onto the floor. He had mentioned before that he could count on one hand the number of times his mother had scolded him. Looking up at Nora, on the verge of tears, Henry resembled a small child.
Mom, you hated Megan, didn't you? You used to mock her caregiving job.
Henry tried to shift the blame onto Nora, his voice shaky and on the brink of crying.
That's because I wrongly assumed Megan was sneaking out at night to cheat. I never mocked her caregiving work.
Nora began explaining the connection between us that Henry had no idea about. The elderly woman I escorted to the police station in high school, which inspired me to become a caregiver, was Nora's mother, Henry's grandmother. By the time I met Henry's family to introduce myself before our marriage, she had already passed away, so I hadn't realized it.
What?
Henry let out a dumbfounded exclamation.
I'm nothing but grateful to Megan. I admire her kind heart and would never hate or mock her.
Henry, who had been cowering moments earlier, suddenly raised his head and glared at me.
Damn it. I married you because you're a caregiver. I thought I could push my parents' caregiving onto you eventually. Otherwise, why would I pick a poor, uneducated woman like you?
With that, Henry began pulling socks and ties from his bag and throwing them at me in frustration. His childish behavior left me too exasperated to even get angry. Nora stepped between us protectively, shielding me from Henry.
You're judging people based on their background?
As Nora raised her hand as if to slap him, I gestured toward the clock, silently asking her to hold back. Nora, it's about time. Henry, this isn't over.
You're right. Let's get to the main issue.
Henry, now entirely defiant, clicked his tongue in irritation. Seriously? What else is there? Right on cue, our doorbell rang.
Hello, I'm from Flower Garden.
A lively young woman's voice came through, and when I opened the front door, there stood a woman in her early 20s holding a bouquet of flowers. I invited her inside. Although hesitant, she followed me, and as soon as she saw Henry sitting on the floor, she gasped in surprise.
What, Henry?
Wait.
Henry let out a groan like a squashed frog when he saw her face. The florist alternated her gaze between Henry and us, her expression filled with suspicion.
What's going on here?
I have no idea.
The woman demanded an explanation from Henry, who screamed in panic and bolted into the next room, locking the door behind him.
I don't know you. You've got the wrong person. We're strangers.
His shaky tone made it obvious how flustered he was.
It's me, Scarlett. We were together this morning, remember?
You've got the wrong person.
Scarlett, as she introduced herself, continued speaking to Henry through the door, but he remained silent. He was probably curled up, covering his ears, waiting for the storm to pass. I was completely disillusioned, realizing my husband was such a pathetic man. I didn't feel anger or sadness anymore, just sheer disbelief.
What's going on? He's my fiancé. What did you two do to him?
Scarlett's fury turned toward Nora and me instead of Henry, who had fled. The truth was, Nora and I had known about Scarlett beforehand. The day after Henry's fake call about Nora's injury, we confirmed his infidelity and hired a private investigator. It didn't take long to uncover the evidence. The woman Henry was seeing was a florist who had once sold him flowers for my birthday. The investigator suggested Scarlett might not know Henry was married. She had been overheard excitedly telling her colleagues about their upcoming wedding. Nora and I discussed how to reveal Henry's marital status in a way that would leave no room for his excuses. Yesterday, Henry had called to say he'd be coming home today to pick up some clothes. I immediately contacted Nora, and we quickly placed an order for a bouquet at the flower shop where Scarlett worked. Scarlett, I'm sorry for involving you in all this. My name is Megan, and I'm Henry's wife. I apologized to Scarlett for dragging her into this and gently revealed that I was Henry's wife.
No, stop lying. I'm marrying him. Don't get in the way.
Seeing how Scarlett didn't believe me, I knew this plan was the right choice. If we had only told her, she likely wouldn't have believed Henry was married. I showed Scarlett the wedding album I had prepared on the table. She gasped softly, hesitated, then cautiously took the album and slowly flipped through the pages. When she handed it back to me, she bit her lip and clenched her fists, struggling to hold back tears. The next moment, Scarlett apologized sincerely to me.
I didn't know. I'm so sorry.
Watching her apologize so sincerely, I felt a fresh surge of anger toward Henry for deceiving such an honest young woman.
Henry, come out right now.
Scarlett yelled toward the room Henry had locked himself in, pounding on the door with her clenched fist. Even in this situation, Henry stayed silent. Scarlett mentioned that she had introduced Henry to her father as her fiancé. Her father, hearing the name of Henry's company, was thrilled, saying it was a trustworthy business.
My dad is the CEO of one of his company's clients. You've probably heard of White Trading.
White Trading was a renowned corporation. As soon as Scarlett mentioned the company's name, the door Henry had hidden behind burst open with such force it nearly broke.
What? I didn't know about that.
Henry stumbled out, pale as a sheet, tripped on the carpet, and crawled to cling to Scarlett's legs.
Scarlett, I'm sorry.
Henry grabbed her hands, spilling insincere words like, I love you, and you're the only one for me.
When I met you, I was planning to divorce this woman. I mean it.
He jerked his chin toward me. As expected, this woman referred to me.
Unbelievable. I'm so glad I didn't end up marrying a jerk like you.
Scarlett turned to me.
Megan, thank you for telling me.
Scarlett, now furious on my behalf, brushed Henry's hands off as if they were something filthy.
Fine. I get it. I really wanted to marry Scarlett. But if she doesn't want me, I'll break it off.
Despite the disastrous situation, Henry's expression betrayed a hint of relief, as if he thought this was the end of it. What a cowardly man. However, Scarlett's next words sent Henry plummeting into despair.
End of it? Hardly. You deceived me and my father. I'll be demanding compensation.
No. Please, no.
Henry crawled on the floor and clung to Nora's legs this time.
Help me, Mom.
Like Scarlett, Nora shook him off.
I spoiled you too much as a single parent. You hurt this young woman and kind Megan. This time, I'll make sure you learn your lesson.
I don't have the money for compensation.
Though Henry had a high-paying job, he had almost no savings. Recently, I had noticed multiple loan statements and collection notices addressed to him arriving at the house. Over the past few years, Henry's spending had become reckless. He had tailored luxury suits, shopped at upscale international boutiques, and visited salons frequently, obsessing over his appearance. Looking back, it was all likely to impress young Scarlett. Despite all that, Scarlett now glared at Henry with hatred, her shoulders trembling with anger.
I'll contact you through my lawyer about what comes next. Don't ever show your face around me again.
Scarlett told Henry firmly and left. As we watched her go, Nora and I turned back to Henry. When Nora called his name, Henry flinched visibly.
You're just like your father, not just in looks, but in everything you've done.
Apparently, Henry's father, Nora's former husband, had also cheated with a younger woman, fathered a child out of wedlock, and eventually abandoned the family. Leaving behind a hollow shell of a man, Nora and I walked out. Unwilling to stay under the same roof as Henry any longer, I decided to stay at Nora's house for a while. The next day, Scarlett contacted me. She said she had found my number on the flower shop's order slip and decided to call. She told me her father had already called Henry's company to lodge a formal complaint. Scarlett's father even threatened to terminate their business relationship, and the company's executives had to work hard to appease him. Though the partnership was saved, Henry was held responsible for the damage to the company's reputation and was demoted to a subsidiary in a rural area of Southeast Asia. As for Scarlett, she sued Henry and secured the compensation she demanded.
Megan, I'm really sorry for everything. You're the only one for me. Please come with me.
Drowning in debt from alimony payments and credit card loans, and now forced to relocate alone to a rural village overseas, Henry clung to my hand, tears and snot streaming down his face, begging for reconciliation. I can't go with you. I have my caregiving job here. Work hard and make sure you pay Scarlett her alimony. I placed the divorce papers on the table, packed my things, and left the house. I didn't ask for alimony for myself. I didn't want to burden Nora, and I knew I could live comfortably on my own income. A few months later, I passed the exam to become a certified caregiver. Nora, who was no longer technically my mother-in-law, celebrated as if it were her own success. Even now, Nora and I enjoy having tea and chatting whenever I have a break from work. We've formed a deep friendship that goes beyond the ties of in-laws. Sometimes we look back on the past, but we never dwell on it. Both of us face forward, enjoying our new lives.